Dave Birkett here, along with Carlos Monarrez. It's Thursday, coming to you a day early with our prediction video because young man over here has not finished his Christmas shopping yet, so I think he's got to go do it tomorrow, right? Something like that? Star Wars Day? I don't know. There's something going on,
I
right?
have to buy you. The coal factory is opening early for you, Dave, so I got to go buy several lumps of coal, really.
Cole
so.
Haan? Is that? Do they make men's stuff? I don't
Oh,
know.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you're not getting any, but yeah,
No.
they do.
Okay. Well, it's Thursday. Lions play. Well, you know what? Let me backtrack. I need to apologize, first of all. Our video yesterday, the very end of it was cut off. I dropped some amazing nuggets of knowledge. So if you weren't listening live, I'm sorry you missed those. Don't know. They disappeared into the ether somewhere. We were planning on having Sean Windsor, join
He
us.
disappeared into the ether.
Yes, exactly. That we were going to make it up to you by having Silver Lining Sean come join us today, but he bailed out really to go Christmas shopping. So you're left with us two bozos, and we're going to make a prediction on this weekend's game. Done talking about the Matt Patricia, Bob Quinn dynamic for now. I'm sure we'll revisit it next week or after the season or at some point, looking ahead to everything that it means. But for now, Lions Broncos Sunday night. Contain your excitement. I know everyone's thrilled about that game out there, right? You are.
Absolutely. It's going to be a barn burner, Mile High, the salute, Ed McCaffrey, Johnny Elway out there. It's going to be a great game.
The thing I'm most excited about is not that weed is legal there. It is that it's going to be 60 degrees. It's going to be 60 degrees in Denver in late December. Who would have thunk that at the beginning of the season, right? We all sort of pegged that for like a weather game, get ready, like, I don't know, maybe, Lions are going to have to practice in the snow, and here we are. The Lions have been indoors this week because it's going to be so nice out there.
Yeah. And I haven't been to Mile High. I've been to Denver itself, but is it? I mean, how much do you make of the altitude? Is that you think the guys? It's overblown.
I think it's overblown. I think, excuse me, our good friend Doc Chow, who we reference sometimes, Pro Football Doc on Twitter. He put something out there. This might have been around the Mexico City game. Talking about the altitude and just, there were people with their oxygen tanks, and he said those don't really work. It's more just like for the mind than it is anything because your capacity for oxygen, I don't know. I don't want to get into the medical thing and say something that I don't know, but he said, that there's very minimal effect to that. So is it something? Yes, it absolutely is. Like training at altitude, living at altitude, playing at altitude. I mean, there's something there, but look, for a 60-minute game, when it's not like you're going to be on the field running the entire 60 minutes. I mean, maybe the Lions get a few extra subs in early, something like that, to account for that altitude, just making sure that everyone is, has their breath about them. I don't, it's not certainly going to alter my prediction in any way, shape, or form.
Matt Prater would warn us, wouldn't he?
Matt Prater. Yeah, hopefully Matt will be in the locker room this week to talk about that return trip to Denver. I mean, I think everyone out there remembers how the Lions came upon Matt Prater, right? They were having all those field goal woes. I mean, this was after Jason Hanson retired, and God, Nate Freese, David Akers came in for a year or two, and they drafted Nate Freese, and he was a bust, and they had was Kickalicious here at that time, or was that Kickalicious?
Oh, yeah, Kickalicious.
Giorgio Tavecchio was here briefly. Should have won the job. He didn't.
Yeah.
Then they brought in Alex Henry, I think it was.
Alex Henry, yeah.
So finally, Prater had served a suspension.
Baronis, right?
No, Rod Baronis died after the Lions.
Well, weren't they going?
He came in for a workout, but the Lions didn't sign him. They signed somebody else instead. And
on the way back, he died.
He
back to Tennessee.
Passed away in a car accident somewhere in Tennessee, where he's from.
It was a bad era, to say the least, right?
Completely, yeah. I mean, it was a super rough, 4 or 5 games there. They lost to the Bills, remember, because they couldn't make a field goal, or 7 games, whatever it was. I don't remember off the top of my head. But regardless, they found Matt Prater, sort of stumbled into him. Denver released him coming off the suspension, and then, hey, they've been in pretty good hands ever since.
I remember Henry kicked in the game in Charlotte that you made me go cover because your son was born. And
paternity leave, I was there for you, Jack.
There was so much stuff going on that game, and I remember one of the things was it was like they can't. It was like the third game, whenever he just couldn't make a field goal, and I was like, yeah, they got to make a decision here, and they did, and but it resulted in Matt Prater, the second coming of Jason Hanson, so it worked out.
Look, I mean, in a league where kicking is so poor, I mean, with a lot of teams have been struggling for a while to find kickers. The Lions have been extremely fortunate. You go back to Eddie Murray. Obviously, he had a nice run as Lions kicker. Jason Hanson for 20 years, Matt Prater here. For most of this decade, it's been the Lions have been one of the fortunate ones for all the bad things that have gone on in Lions land. They've had Barry and they've had Kelvin and they've had some good kickers too.
They're the kicking champions of the NFL. That's what you can hang your head on.
All right, so real quick before we get to predictions, I figured since this is podcast talk too, make sure you subscribe on iTunes.
Talking Lions. That's
Talking
what it's called. It actually has a name. I have a better name.
Burke's Eye View, right? That's what we.
No,
you
I'm
love
gonna
that.
leave. If you say that one more time, I'm leaving.
Play on words, come on. But no, I did want to bring this up real quick before we get into the prediction because when I filed this story today about the centennial class for the Pro Football Hall of Fame and the candidates for that, there are, I believe it's 20 players, and they're going to select 10 of those. Alex Karras, one of them. I stumbled across the story that you wrote, the column that you wrote a couple years ago, just saying the Lions, he deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. I know obviously you talked to Ted Karras when he was here too, but I don't know. Maybe I'll call this list up as you're talking, but maybe you can explain a little bit about why Alex Karras deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. And for those who don't know out there, this is the centennial class. There's a sort of a special committee that picked the finalists, and then they're going to whittle this list down. They are going to pick the 15 members. It's 10 players. I think it's 3 contributors and 2 coaches. They're going to vote on that, and there's certain to be some, some. Art Modell is one of the candidates. Paul Tagliabue, one of the candidates. If either one of those guys appears on the finalist ballot, I think you'll have a lot of unhappy people in the NFL. Tagliabue's already been voted down 4 times when he's come up in there. He played a role in
they're circumventing the normal voting process to get these guys in.
Absolutely. Tagliabue 4 times. He was part of the whole concussion era. Didn't do enough, or depending on your point of view, maybe covered up some things. So that's been held against him. Modell moved, obviously, the Browns. And so those 2 were seen as having no chance with the selection committee, of which I'm a part of. And now, like you said, maybe they're trying to backdoor their way into Canton. But explain to me as I grab this list, explain to the viewers out there, the listeners, why Alex Karras, all-pro defensive tackle for a couple years with the Lions on the all-decades team of the 1960s, just maybe, why your understanding of why he didn't get in and why maybe he should be in as well.
Yeah, so Karras, the reason I'll hold it if you want to do that. So Karras, he played in an era before they really kept statistics for defensive tackles. He was a defensive tackle, and the Lions had a really good defensive line in the 60s and he was the anchor of that line, the fearsome foursome, and so when you talk to old players, I remember talking to Ditka when Karras died. I wrote the obituary and talked to Mike Ditka and Ditka went against him. He was a tight end for the Bears, a Hall of Fame tight end, and he was like, nobody wanted to go against Karras. He was one of those guys, and he listed other guys, Big Daddy Lipscomb, these other guys that were really great players at the time, but he said Karras was just different. Like, he was a mauler out there. He played tough and borderline dirty, and nobody, Hallis told Ditka to go and, hey, go block Karras. He's like, I'm not doing that. He, defied George Hallis because he didn't want to do that. And there's no sack numbers for him because they didn't keep stats at the time. The sack wasn't really a stat that was kept until the 80s, I think. So, but if you talk to the people who saw him play, either as fans or former players who went against him, they all unilaterally say was one of the best of his era. He definitely belongs in. The reason he's not in is because he was involved in this gambling scandal. And I forget what year it was.
63, I believe.
63, and he was banned. He and Paul Hornung. I don't know if anybody else was banned
I think it was
that
just
season.
Those 2 that were suspended for the year, and Paul somehow got into the Hall of Fame while Alex has been.
Hornung. The reason Hornung got in is because he apologized to the commissioner at the time, Rozelle, and was it Rozelle? Who was it, Rozelle?
Yeah, Pete
Rozelle at the time. And Karras didn't. He just refused. He said, listen, this is something that goes on. He wasn't betting on the Lions. He was betting on, I think, it was something like the Lions were playing in the runner-up game or something in Miami, and they bet on the championship game pre-Super Bowl. But everybody did it. This was a different era. You have to remember, for all you people who remember the AC Lindell and this kind of stuff, he was part owner of that. He was kind of a strident, kind of, mavericky type figure at the time. He didn't like being told what to do. It was a time when players didn't get paid very much. and he got paid more for a pro wrestling match that he did during his off season or suspended season than he did for the whole season. I think playing in the NFL one year. So he had his quarrels with the NFL, and as you know, he went on to fame at being a TV actor, movie actor, Blazing Saddles, Webster. He never needed the NFL. He never kowtowed to them. He never fell on a sword and apologized. If he had done that, I'm almost positive he would have been in the NFL by now. But he's never done it. I'm sorry, the Hall of Fame. So he needs to. Now that he passed away a few years ago, 5-6 years ago. So there's been an effort by the Fords and the Karras family, to some of the fan base, to recognize him and to try to get him in. The Fords, the Lions inducted him into their Ring of Honor, Pride of the Lions, whatever it's called. Was it last year, the year before? Probably just right after I wrote that column, Dave. I think one of the things was
things happen, Carlos.
I make it happen. I shake the trees and things happen, Dave. But that was the right call, because you have to.
Absolutely.
You can't ask him to be in the Hall of Fame. He's not in your own Ring of Honor. So that's part of the step.
He was a key player, and obviously I'm going to read just some of these names here because I think he has a way, a path in. But look, some of these names are from the 20s and 30s and 40s, so only Mick McCabe out there saw them play, and there's not much. Yeah, I think Mick might have covered. A couple of these guys. There was Ox Emerson played for the Lions and the Portsmouth Spartans in the 30s. He's one of the finalists. Mick, I think, was in his third year on the beat back then.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, that's right. But no, a couple other names that people may recognize out there: Randy Gradishaw, Roger Craig, Cliff Branch, Harold Carmichael, Drew Pearson, Donnie Shell. So those are some of the players that Alex Karras will be competing against for some of those, I guess those 10 spots. The contributors, I mentioned Paul Tagliabue, Art Modell. Look, no guarantee that they get in this, but
how many players will get in? 10?
10 of the 20 players,
okay.
3 of the 10 finalists and contributors, and there's Ralph Hay, who founded the NFL essentially. Like, that's a guy that I would think gets in, right? Yeah, he was owner of the Canton Bulldogs, and they had the meeting back at the old whatever, I don't remember if it was an auto shop or whatever the store was that I think he owned, and that's where the NFL was sort of founded. So, I mean, he was only
rookie. He was an intern that year for the Free Press.
He was exactly. I think he celebrated his 30th birthday that year. But he was only an owner for a short period of time, but he founded the league, right?
Yeah.
But beyond that, there's Paul Tagliabue, George Young, Steve Sable from NFL Films, Art Modell. So there's a number of there's no slam dunk that those two get in. And then the 2 names that I want to mention here among the 8 coaches finalists, 2 of those will get in. Look, it's probably going to be Don Coryell. He's come up a number of times here recently. Jimmy Johnson's been on the ballot that we voted on before. 2 other names, though. Buddy Parker, Lions coach, led the Lions to 2 championships, walked away right before that 57 season. And then let's kind of full circle back to today's Lions, Dick Vermeil. I just had to bring that one up because we've talked about Dick Vermeil once or twice, given what he did in Philadelphia and L.A. and even Kansas City. 2 straight losing seasons, winning in the 3rd, won a Super Bowl, made another. And that brings us back to these Lions today, Carlos. So,
prediction: does Karras get in? 10 out of 20 guys.
I think Karras will. I mean, I think. Look, again, I don't know some of those names from the pre-1960 era, really. I would.
Roger Craig, those guys.
Yeah, look, I think Craig has a good case. I mean, certainly, the more modern era, none of these are considered modern era candidates, but the more modern of those guys, Donnie Shell, there's a number of those guys who have a very good case. And this is, again, there's some regular selectors. There's, I believe Bill Belichick is on the panel that's making these selections. So they're taking everything into account, and I think they'll cover all eras with the people they induct.
And I think that's the most important part is the panelists who are picking this, this era, because if you have older panelists, then they will certainly be more receptive and sympathetic toward Karras's, Of course, I hope there's no quiet, unofficial blackball from the NFL of Karras still has not apologized, and his whatever,
It's tough to apologize.
It's going to be tough to do it now.
Ouija board for that,
but but this is, I mean, it's been so long since he played, and there's no stats. It's really hard to make his case unless you're an old person or have some kind of ties to the Lions or some kind of,
Well, so there are some old Hall of Famers that are in this panel. I don't know the exact number of guys, but some players that have played presumably in that era. Like I said, Bill Belichick, other historians of the game, I guess. Certainly some selectors, some of the people that comprise the Veterans Committee of the selectors.
Bill Belichick would be a huge, guy in the Karras corner because he was a coach here under Rick Forzano. Matt Patricia is his boy. Patricia, I'm sure, is going to help, help make Karras' case in some roundabout way, unofficially. So that definitely will help. Having, if you're Bill Belichick and you start talking and advocating, that carries a lot of weight.
I think Karras is, and we'll see. We'll find out next month. And again, maybe that's just because I know more about his career than some of these other guys. But
are you going to advocate, Dave? When are you going to step up?
I have zero input in this one. We still vote on the 5 modern era finalists, and that'll be Super Bowl weekend. But we have zero input in these candidates other than to complain about them trying to do this end around and trying to get Paul Tagliabue in after being voted down 4 times. 4 times he's gotten voted down.
Well, let me ask
4
you this.
times.
Like the guys I look at, like you see Roger Craig, I think he'll get in at some point, But Karras,
well, everyone on this list, all those players are they're seniors committee, era, I guess, nominees. None of them are modern era anymore, so we will not vote on any of them ever again. What the regular process, 15 finalists, modern era finalists, we vote on 5. Typically, there's also, or at least in the last couple of years, there's been 3 contributors or Veterans Committee nominees, and that's where all these players will fall in future years. So you would think that the 10 players that don't get selected in are probably next up when the Veterans Committee, submits their list of 1 or 2 to the regular voters in future years. But this is just to celebrate the 100th season of the NFL.
But Karras has never been close, right? He's never been up by the Veterans Committee for a vote.
No, so the way it works, he's been talked about by the Veterans Committee. The Veterans Committee sort of has a similar process to the regular Hall of Fame voting, which is you take, we start with a pool of 120 candidates, and then it's whittled down to 25, and then we vote from 25 to 15. And then the top 15 vote getters among the 48 selectors, that's who's presented at at Super Bowl weekend every year, who we discuss in great detail. And then you whittle that down from 15 to 10 to 5. And it's a similar process with the veterans players where, or the Veterans Committee, where they take a list of whatever it may be. Maybe it's 25 people to start, and then they pick 15 out of there, and they whittle that down to 10 and 5. So he is, make their 1 or 2 selections from that. So he has never gone that far. He's been in that top 15 discussion where the committee has talked about him, but he's never got to the point where he's been before the full selection committee.
Okay. Well, so he's around. He's on the periphery. So I think what you're saying is right. If he doesn't get in this time, he's kind of on the edge, and he'll be more at the forefront now. There will be more discussion, and he probably will get in at some point. And you know what? Part of the thing is politically, the Fords have been owners for a long time. The Lions are, for whatever you want to say, they are one of the old franchises. They've had steady ownership. They've been good, good stewards.
Yep.
So I think that counts for a lot. That they're. And after Karras, you have Calvin. And that's it.
That's it.
And that's it. I'm sorry, Matthew Stafford, but that's it. There's no one else who's on the horizon at all.
Maybe
right?
Buddy Parker and Ox. Maybe they get in. That's really it, though. There's no one else that's going to probably get in. Lomas Brown, Herman Moore, Chris Spielman, those are names that come up on that list of 125 every year, but none of them make it to the 25 cut down. So you're really talking about after this process of Karras gets in, Calvin will be up next year, and that'll be another whole video and discussion. But, beyond that, I can probably I've never had to present anyone so far in these meetings, and after Kelvin, I'm not going to have to present anyone.
This is Dave Birkett's nightmare.
No,
stand up.
I already know my speech.
Calvin's easy. Calvin's kind of a somewhat of a slam dunk. Somewhat. I know we know there's a few voters in there who's going to say, "What did he ever do?" But he's kind of as close as the Lions can get, other than Barry Sanders. He shouldn't be too hard of a case to present. But
he's
other
one
guys,
of the NFL's finalists for their all-time team right now of 20. I think there's 24 receivers. He's one of them. He's going to get
having to present Lomas Brown or make an argument for Lomas Brown or Spielman. That would be your nightmare to have to sit there and. make
Well,
their
I think
case.
certainly, if you ever have to make a case for someone who you don't believe belongs in the Hall of Fame, that would be a difficult thing to do. Look, I wrote something on Lomas's Hall of Fame chances earlier this year because Barry Sanders had I asked Barry who from his era does he think
All those
belongs
offensive
in.
linemen.
Well, he mentioned Lomas, and you look at Lomas's resume. I mean, he won a Super Bowl and he played for 20 years, and he played the second most games among offensive linemen, and he has a number of All Pro and Pro Bowl selections. So you could make the case. I don't think it would be that difficult to make the case when you stack his resume up against some of the other offensive linemen, but. Again, he's never got there, and his window's about to close in terms of when we talk about him, and then he goes to the Veterans Committee for any further consideration. So, all right, we're gonna have to get into the locker room here in a sec. So let's get on with our predictions. Lions, Broncos. I don't think it's Mile High anymore. What is it? Invesco Field at Mile High and Power something. I don't know.
John Elway Memorial Stadium.
Whatever. It's in Denver. It's gonna be warm.
Cold.
Warmer than here. And again, I don't know how many fans are going to be there. What do you think? Just give me a score. Give me a prediction, Carlos. How do you see this one playing out? Can the Lions finally get a win, snap the 7-game losing streak, go into the offseason with a little bit of positive momentum, and really upset all their fans because they squander draft position?
That would be so Lions, wouldn't it? No, there's just too many guys who are hurt. The Jared Davises and the Joe Dahls, and you're down to there's just. Give credit to guys like Wes Hills who are trying to step up. Scarborough.
Carrion might be back this week.
Carrion might be back.
Should be back. Likely will.
It's not enough. It's just not enough. And playing on the road, and David Blau the league's kind of adjusted to him a little bit. And playing on the road. Even say what you will, but Mile High, and they don't have a good record either. They're like 5-9 or something.
Broncos aren't very good. Correct.
So, but they're at home. That makes a difference. I remember. I wouldn't call myself a Raiders fan, but I watched a lot of Raiders games, so a fair amount when they'd play in Denver. This is the John Elway era, but still, it was always like KC and Denver were hard to play at. If the fans are, I don't know if this is their last home game, but they'll show up for that. What else are you going to do in Denver besides get some, edibles or whatever?
Smoke.
Yeah. So I just don't see it. I think the Broncos are going to win 21-17. So
it's funny. I think it's going to be a low score as well because. Look, Drew Lock's their quarterback too, right? But maybe that's why I'm picking the Broncos to win at the end of the day. The Lions against rookie quarterbacks. Sam Darnold, Kyler Murray. You can go down the list where they haven't really. I know they've won a couple games too, right? They beat Josh Allen last year, but they just have this thing where they struggle against rookies for some reason. Yeah, Haskins. Locke this will be his 4th start, and. Yeah, who knows what to make of him, right? He played well a little, in the first 2 games he played.
He beat the bad teams.
They got smoked last week. It was snowing, though, last week. And so, I don't know that their offense really was able to do much. Look, at end of the day, I think we're probably looking at something similar, 20-16, somewhere in that neighborhood. But I will say this is really the Lions' last chance to win. I shouldn't say that, right? Maybe Aaron Rodgers sits out next week, and home finale they can back their way into win there. But Lions fans will be so mad if the Lions won. What if they won these last 2 games, and all of a sudden instead of looking at the number 3 pick in the draft, they're looking at the 10 pick in the draft?
No, because when I was advocating to tank whatever it was last year or the year before, whatever it was, maybe both years. I'm not saying tank. These are meaningless games. I was like, no, you got to win this game. You play to win the game, and this and that.
You play to win the game.
And we have, Golden Tate throwing a meaningless touchdown to Matthew Stafford in the finale. Everybody's happy. Yeah. We won a meaningless game and dropped 2-3 spots in the
Missed
draft.
out on Josh Allen.
Missed out on, yeah, exactly. It's the right thing to do, which is probably why the Lions won't do it. And they'll win that. It'd be so Lions and so Packers for the Packers to sort of troll the Lions by not playing.
Look, if you're Green Bay and they still have something to play for next week. So I don't think they'll sit Rodgers because positioning in the NFC playoffs is going to be so important. Those first 2 seeds and first-round buys are still going to be up for grabs. So
and he's healthy. He's not banged up.
Yeah, I highly doubt, and that'll be a 1:00 game, so it's not like they'll necessarily have known what Seattle and San Francisco do, maybe in the 4:00 window. So I would expect that Green Bay is playing everybody. But so in all likelihood, this is the Lions' last chance at a win. And
realistic, yeah.
I could see them getting it just because Denver's not a good team. But again, rookie quarterback, bad news for the Lions. Broncos win 20-16. 16.
I would like to, if to me, I don't care about draft picks really. I mean, whether you're picking 5th or 6th or something, I don't know if there's going to be that big of a difference. But for the way that this season has gone and everything, I wouldn't mind seeing them beat the Broncos, and then so they drop a spot in the draft order. And they get probably their heads kicked.
No. Look, if they, I mean, this week they'll be 3rd. They're 5th right now, but Washington and New York play each other. Cincinnati and Miami play each other. So, assuming Miami wins, Miami could lose to Cincinnati, I guess. So I don't want to make that assumption. But Washington and New York, one of those teams is falling below the Lions. They're going up to 4 at least. If Miami beats Cincinnati, who's a 1-win team, the Lions go up to 3. So if they lose this game, if they win this game, instead of being 3rd, you're going to be 7th, 8th in the draft order. Like, it's a pretty significant difference. 3rd, maybe you got some teams that want Tua and you can trade down, or you're going to get Jeff Okudah, or you're going to get Brown or something.
So
but
they can go as high as 3.
They're going to be 3 this weekend if Miami wins.
Wow. Where's that game?
I forget if it's in Miami. I think it's, I don't know.
All right.
Regardless, Miami, Cincy. Yeah. So you win. All of a sudden, you're looking at 8. That's you're looking at T.J. Hawkinson instead of who went 3rd last year, Quinnen Williams. That's what you're looking at.
Can they draft Hawkinson again at 8?
It's quite possible.
Does Ebron have a brother?
Oh, wow. Now you sound like the Carlos that I know from years past. All right, that's going to do it for us here. We're going to head into the locker room. It's Thursday. We're filming this, recording this, so we got to get in and talk to some players about the big game ahead. For Carlos Monarrez, I'm Dave Birkett, Freep.com.